Hey guys, welcome back to Hutch Money Minutes, the Road Noise with Hutch series. I'm actually sitting in LA traffic right now, headed up to a show on Friday afternoon on the 101 freeway going north. Not quite yet to downtown. There's a big wall right here, but at some point, maybe you'll see downtown LA. I've been looking at it through the haze, going 6 miles an hour right now. Six. Yeah, that's what happens when you want to come up to LA for a show. What show am I seeing? It's a band called Goose. So it is they're a Connecticut jam band, a lot of young guys. That are just great musicians. Allegedly, a lot of them went to Berkeley School of Music. Some of them went to high school together. In the spirit of jam band, there are a lot of Deadhead fans, Fishhead fans, but these guys are doing their own thing. It's most jam bands really it is modern day jazz, but with a rock funk twist is what they're doing. But pretty cool. I realize it's not for everybody, but I just really enjoy watching virtuosos of our day get out there on stage and not be afraid to go off script, which is basically what I'm doing here right now with Road Noise with Hutch. I was going to, in fact, going off script, I was going to talk about something totally different. I was going to talk about life insurance, a new life insurance product that's coming out and how to use it for infinite banking. Obviously, a lot of my content at bankingtruths.com is about that. But as I was sitting, now I'm going 8 miles an hour in LA traffic, I was thinking about my history with this city growing up in Southern California. I actually did go to UCLA, and I was here when the LA riots happened, and that was a really impactful event for me. Um, oh wow, we're passing some bridges. There's like a homeless dude right there, and it looks like there's like a major. I don't know about major, but there's some kind of encampment. I don't know what he's doing. Interesting. I've seen this city evolve and devolve over the years. It's probably the worst I've ever seen it, in spite of having seen it in the LA riots. Um, this is not by any means a statement on politics or race. Simply just talking about my experience, and I am going to loop it back to talking about money because in the infinite banking space, we do get a lot of people that are more on the extreme side. Uh, you know, that the world's going to come to an end at any moment. And quite frankly, that's what I thought having experienced the LA riots. And it's been 3 decades since, a little bit more than 3 decades since. So we're in 2024 now. The Sublime song says April 26, 1992, but that's actually not true. It was April 29th, 1992. I remember because it was the day after my midterms. And when the Sublime song came out shortly after, I'm like, they did it wrong. But whatever, it happens. Fun fact. At any rate, yeah, why was it so impactful for me? So I was a freshman in college at the time, having grown up in about an hour south in Orange County, South Orange County, like shifted around between San Clemente, Dana Point, Laguna Niguel. Back then they were sleepy little beach towns. Uh, now they're beautiful and they're still like not nearly as populated as here, but they've turned into, very affluent pockets. I always joke around and say the Laguna Niguel is the slums of Laguna Beach, whatever that means. But yeah, I grew up pretty sheltered in that it was mostly white people. I actually am half Mexican. And ancestry says I'm a little less than half, but whatever. On my mom's side, Mexican. And yeah, it was pretty whitewashed growing up in OC. So when I moved to LA, obviously Westwood, where UCLA is pretty sheltered. It's not like USC, which is right down here. I'm looking straight at downtown now. By the way, I realize you can't see it. We'll probably pass by it before this show's done. It's going 9 miles an hour now. Uh, where was I? Yeah, so I was actually in an African American history class at the time. when the LA riots hit. And it just blew my mind wide open. I think my biggest takeaway from it is not many people have seen what happens in society, especially dense urban society, when law and order takes the weekend off. And that's pretty much what happened. So when the riots erupted, I think there was an effort to contain them in it. And I think at some point the order was just let it go. And then by about the third day, the National Guard came in and things got contained. Um, I actually went down. So at the time I love music. And so I lived where a lot of the clubs were, the Roxy, Whiskey A Go Go, the Central, which became the Viper Room, Johnny Depp's Viper Room. I forget what it's called now, but I could walk to all those places. Uh, it was great. I shared a apartment with two other students, and it was about a 20-minute commute to UCLA. I remember saying, I want to go down there and check it out. We actually got to know our local homeless, and they were burnout old rocker dudes. One guy was a younger black guy, and he said, "Hey, man, you're crazy." We got to know him because we were underage, and they would buy us beer, and we would, give them money occasionally. We would even let them come in and take a shower at our place sometimes. But if we needed beer, they would help us out. Um, and the young black guy is like, "Hey, look, man, I'm black, and I don't want to go down there. You're crazy." And I said, "Well, maybe I am, but like I'm studying this stuff in history class right now. We just learned about the Watts riots, which happened a couple decades prior, and it like this is crazy. Like this is actually happening, and it just seemed foolish not to. Well, it was foolish to go down there, but thankfully nothing happened to me. But it seemed foolish at the time to me to not go see what was happening, because even at that time, I did believe that there was some amount of fake news or controlled news. Um, and he said that I could get hurt. And I said, I suppose I could. I could get hurt on the freeway. Um, at any rate, he said, well, you guys are crazy, because one of my roommates and my girlfriend at the time was like, yeah, let's go. Let's go check it out. So we put a cooler and a trunk full of beer. I mean, it's actually kind of ridiculous when we think about it. It was almost like we thought about it like going to like see a safari or whatever, right? It's crazy. But he goes, I'm gonna go with you guys. Make sure you're okay, which is cool. His name was Ricky. Really, really cool guy. Um, and we actually checked it out for the next 2 days, and nothing did happen to us. And we saw a lot of crazy stuff. A lot of crazy stuff. Um, but what I've taken away from that going forward is most people have not seen what happens. In fact, the building I just passed was LA County Jail. You can tell because the windows are really thin. What happens when law and order takes the weekend off? And, people live their lives pretty complacent that social norms and laws will be obeyed and respected. And here was this little moment of time when everything was off. Now, obviously, some horrible things happened, with Reginald Denny getting pulled from trucks. Had I known that, I probably wouldn't have gone down. Um, and again, I was very, very naive in my choice, but I genuinely wanted to know what was happening. And I actually thought, what did happen was unjust in terms of, the force used was excessive, and they moved the court case from downtown up to Simi Valley, where it was known that there were a lot of police officers that lived there, and obviously the police officers got off. Um, I'm very, very thankful. I do need to say that I'm very, very thankful uh, for the police in terms of, you know, I've been protected at times. I have three daughters, and I want them to be protected. And there's been actual times in my life especially when I was going to concerts and whatnot, and had long hair at the time. And even though it's not racism per se, I was treated maybe a little harsher than I would be had I not had long hair. And so had some of that treatment before. Some of it had to do with my mouth, and I have to take responsibility for that. um, I digress. Going back to Law and Order taking the weekend off, we did see like buildings burning. We did see at one point, somebody actually, we were in a plaza watching chaos, and there was a video store with actual videotapes. It was not a Blockbuster, but it was like somebody's private Blockbuster. And there were gates, fences. This is like down near USC, like kind of beyond that a little bit. It was near Martin Luther King Boulevard, and I forget what the cross street was. But a machine gun, somebody shoot a machine gun at the lock, and it was like daunting because it wasn't that far from us. It was like, whoa. And then we realized like nobody was being shot. Lock was, and the gates opened and people went in and came out with stuff. We also saw a camping store that was like smoke was oozing from it. So I assume there were flames somewhere. But then there was a group of people like lifting like the gates, like lifting the gates, and in it, and then somebody was kind of orchestrated, like, okay, go in, go in, go in, go in, go out, go out, go out, go out, and people leaving with stuff. Uh, the local homeless scene, like this was before it was a fad, like wearing hats and flannels and things with the like the tags on them, and the plastic security tags. And yeah, it blew my mind. It blew my mind what was happening. And I remember thinking at that time, like I dropped out of college for all practical purposes after April 29th, 1992. I just basically didn't go back because I was under the impression with my young and foolish brain that like this was really the beginning of the end of the world. And here I was studying all this history and everything else. And I need to go live my life because it's all coming to an end soon. I will say too, like I'm past downtown. I remember at one point, like I can't even see the Hollywood Hills right now because there's so much smog. But seeing like black smoke, like seeing the Hollywood Hills and the mountains and stuff, and then just black smoke just kind of oozing everywhere, and it was really ominous. It was really eerie. I remember seeing other people, and it'd be interesting to know where this footage was, but like passing cars with like, because think about it, Hollywood and LA, there's a lot of film majors and film, people in motion picture, and there's like having professional stuff, like driving by out of like with sunroofs and like filming all this stuff. Um, Tying it back to money, like what? Well, actually, let me go ahead and finish the story. Came back and rested, and then it wasn't over. Like I said, it really wasn't contained, and went the next night to see stuff, and noticed there was starting to be efforts of containment. And then I think the third night we actually got pulled over by the National Guard, and they're like, "What are you freaking doing?" Or like, our bad. We were just driving around, and whatever. They searched our cars, searched us, and let us go. Let us go back, which was a good thing. It was, but it was kind of over. Like, and there were like full encampments of like tanks and soldiers and everything. Um, in terms of what this means for money, we do get a lot of people that are pretty extreme, and they, are like, why would I do any of this? I'm just going to put everything in gold and silver and canned food and bullets and everything else. And these are things I call alternative asset allocation, where they really don't lose their value. Like I understand there's some volatility with gold and silver, but for the most part, over time it has tracked purchasing power. I don't know about, there is no chart for the whatever the price of 9mm slugs or 38 bullets or shotgun shells or whatever. But generally, these things don't lose their value over time. They're just not. You can't transact with them. They're illiquid. At least the guns and bullets and canned food and whatnot. But these are things that people have, I think, by the way, I think people have tracked the price of MREs, meals ready to eat, and like there is kind of an index for that, almost like the VIX, the fear index for the S&P. The VIX measures the cost of puts to insure the S&P. I think somebody actually has done that for MREs. You should take a look. Um, but these illiquid things that probably everybody should have to some degree, and I know people think I'm crazy when I bring this up, um, is that the value of them just skyrockets in an event like that. And even though an event like that, the chances of it happening are like so slim, it does occur. Like I can attest to the fact that it does occur. Um, and it was freaking crazy. It blew my mind so much so that I dropped out of college. And those could have been my own irresponsible choices. Like I don't regret that. It just is. It is what it is. Like it was just part of my journey. And it was great because I didn't really know what I was there to study in school. I hadn't really found my passion. And when I did go back to school and graduate, I ended up going back for writing, which even at the time I was making money, and it was really my wife insisted, like I went to grade school with my wife, by the way. We went to Catholic school together from second grade to fifth grade. Um, and she was like, "You were so smart. You have to go back to school." I'm like, "No, I really don't." She's like, "Yes, you do." Okay, fine, I'll do it. And then I actually enjoyed it because I enjoyed I enjoyed writing and reading certain things, not everything we had to read. But I ended up graduating with a literary journalism degree. Essentially, it was a writing degree, but I was able to study accounts of things that were nonfiction, but written in a way that was creative and written in a way that was storytelling. And I had no idea how this would benefit me in the future. And I do want to write the great American novel someday. But at least, like, obviously, a lot of you have found me through SEO because I'm doing technical writing on life insurance and everything else. And I realize I've somewhat of a gift. I'm not saying I'm the greatest writer in the world, but I can communicate well with the written word. Uh, okay, it's telling me I need to get fuel. I'm good right now. I will get it. It is quite expensive here. But again, going back to the cost of things, like fuel has gone up recently just because of the money printing. And so has silver and gold. I don't know about, I haven't bought any ammo lately or meals ready to eat, but I do have a lot of Costco canned chicken and I eat it from time to time. And it holds pretty well. And people make fun of, sometimes people come to my garage and they see it and they're like, "Oh my gosh," right? Like, what do you, doomsday prepper? And like, no, I'm not, but, I also don't want to get caught with my pants down. Um, so I, beating around the bush, but I'm just sharing with you what goes through my mind. The way I look at it, I do have friends that have like on full doomsday prepper. One in particular that sold everything here, moved to Uruguay on a farm with water running through it, solar and all that stuff. Like, I can't do that. I'm still here in America. I am proud to be an American. I bond very much with American culture. I don't see myself leaving, and I know what happens when things really go south in a hurry. And so I still am going to use things like cash to transact. You need it. It's the ultimate fungible token. Like they call NFT a non-fungible token. It just means it's not necessarily ready. There's not a ready market for it. And cash is the ultimate fungible token. But I don't keep a lot in cash. I use cash value of life insurance. I still have stocks and bonds. I still have some real estate. I still have some precious metals. I still have retirement accounts, hoping that the system will work better than it is working now, but will hopefully course correct. But I also have this alternative asset allocation in case things don't. And again, I wasn't even planning on talking about this, but instead of just writing it off as like, "Oh, that could never happen," I remember reading a great article during COVID about when essentially like they had already done tons of quantitative easing, like tons and tons of quantitative easing. There was already QE1, 2, 3, and now they were on infinity. And now they had to do QE infinity, quantitative easing infinity. And the article I read said something to the effect of like, what they've essentially done by bailing out the market here that should have been puking, like when the whole world shut down for COVID, which turned out to be an overreaction, proven, um, by bailing out the market, because it puked like 30% in a period measured in weeks. That when they propped it up with QE infinity, what they did is they proved that they weren't going to let the market absorb the losses that it probably should have absorbed. And like it did in the Great Depression, where it lost 80, 90%, that the system would prop it up. But by doing so, it shifted the risk to the system itself. Like, that will keep working, that has worked, and that will keep working until at some point it doesn't. And from what I've seen, that will be very scary. And hopefully that won't ever have to happen on my watch or my kids' watch. But I think it's really irresponsible to just have an opinion or a narrative that something that extreme could never happen. And part of why I hold that is because I was around to witness what happens when things get primal and Law and Order takes the weekend off. Now, again, I did see some cooperation amongst this. It kind of reminds me of the saying that Warren Buffett says, like, I don't know what World War III is going to be fought with, but I'm pretty sure World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. And again, I hope nobody ever has to go through that. But if you were just looking at an asset allocation chart, to actually have hard assets and hard goods with functionality for survival and just protecting your survival, to have a small percentage allocated to that. Worst case scenario, you have an illiquid asset that never loses value. And I don't even want to call it a best case scenario, because the other worst case scenario is you have to use them. But if you do, it's just like the saying goes, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So for what it's worth, again, this was not even what I was planning to talk about on this long drive, but it just occurred to me, and these are real thoughts that I have. I think they're valid. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. But again, being a responsible father of 3 daughters, having seen what I've seen, knowing what I know, speculating what I think I know, where it does seem like our freedoms are being slowly removed from us, and there's events or there's reasons that they're excusing it, but it's not necessarily what our forefathers had in mind. I think it's a responsible thing to do if you have the means and you can afford to be illiquid for that small percentage of your assets, to just think about what you would need in case of just basic survival, for maybe not a weekend, but a month or a couple months. And going back to that article with COVID, I remember saying to a lot of people, because when everybody was rushing out to getting toilet paper, it was interesting. Like, I actually called local pawn shops, and there was some gold for sale. And back then, gold was about 15 and change, about $1,500. Like right now, I think it's like 26. And I found some, and I had to go get cash. So I had to juggle things around, and my bank actually limited me how much cash I could pull out. And I thought, this is the dumbest thing in the world. Like, they're going to be printing this crap like it's going out of style. There is not going to be a shortage of cash. But I guess there was like a run on banks for cash. But I was able to cobble together between 2 different banks and ATMs, and because you could pull more from that. And I was able to buy, I think, 6 ounces of gold at the time. And that's all I could get, because of this cash shortage. But I felt like such a contrarian, because the whole world was out there trying to hoard cash and toilet paper. And here I was trying to trade that stuff for, something that arguably is illiquid, but could retain its purchasing power and would still be valuable. And in a cataclysmic event, just in case. Because I didn't know if that was it, this COVID thing, but I knew it was bad. And along with the spirit of that article about shifting risks of the system, whereas before, maybe the risk of having like a national or global, like, event like that was maybe like less than 1%. By the very nature of those events and what was happening in the draconian lockdowns, it just shifted from like, call it 0.1% to call it 1% or 2%. Like it went up substantially. It's still a long shot, but the threat of it went up substantially. And unfortunately, with what I'm seeing happening, sometimes quickly, like with COVID, or sometimes just slowly, overtly, I see the seed sowing of control and the shift of power happening. I keep thinking that percentage just creeps up a little bit every day. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to sell everything and go move to a farm in Uruguay. I'm still going to operate in the real world, but I am going to allocate a little bit of my liquidity to stuff that'll just never lose its value. So with that, kind of a weird subject, but it was on my heart. Wanted to share with you guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Road Noise with Hutch. We'll have some more conventional strategy stuff coming up, I promise. But I hope you found this interesting.